Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Earthquake Detector. In 132 AD, a man named Zhang Hen was able to create the first earthquake detector called the seismoscope. Far ahead of its time, this creation was incredibly accurate and is actually comparable in efficiency to those that we use now. Apparently, in 138, this tool detected an earthquake that was a ways away, and at the time nobody believed it and dismissed the warning. A few days later, a messenger arrived and asked for help, which confirmed that this thing really did accurately detect an earthquake and where it was coming from. Researchers still aren't sure exactly how it works, which is so crazy, but I guess some things are just meant to be a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the malaria vaccine. In October of last year, the World Health Organization made an important announcement when they approved the world's very first malaria vaccine for kids. There's a couple reasons why this deserved a spot on today's list. The first one being because it is the first vaccine against any parasitic disease, which is a step forward for the world of medicine. But more importantly, this vaccine is crucial because malaria is still one of the most dangerous diseases on the entire planet, and it's one that takes the lives of over 500,000 people annually. The new vaccine cost over $750 million to make, and it began being created and tested all the way back in 1987, so it certainly was not an easy road by any means. This new vaccine is meant to fight against the deadliest of the 5 malaria pathogens, and the medicine is given through 4 different injections. Right now, it is estimated that this shot could prevent about 5.3 million malaria cases every single year. In our number 8 spot today, we have Mars. February of 2021 was a big month for Mars, which is hilarious to say, but also very true. In that time, there were 3 different missions that arrived to the red planet, and this wasn't really a coincidence. It was just a few different space agencies taking advantage of the Earth-Mars orbit alignment, which only happens once every 26 months. First, the UAE's Hope orbiter reached the planet, which is aimed to study the past, present, and future of the Mars climate by orbiting the planet. This will hopefully show us any patterns or changes on Mars, whether they're daily, monthly, or yearly. Then, the CNSA Tianwen-1 began surveying the surface of the planet from orbit before the Zhurong rover touched down on the planet to actually move around the surface. And then finally, we have the Perseverance rover from NASA, which will spend the next few years digging into the soil and rock to collect samples of the planet for us to study. With all of these Mars visits, one of the most important things we learned, or really tested, is how we can fly through the brutal and harsh Martian atmosphere. Basically, the Ingenuity helicopter that came on the mission with Perseverance helps by scouting out the area ahead to highlight any potential hazards or objects that might be of interest. I had to include this quote from an article on indiatoday.in where I found some of this information because it really sums up this whole point so beautifully. They wrote, quote, "This year on Mars, the UAE learned how to orbit, China learned how to land, and NASA learned how to fly." In our number 7 spot today, we have animal evolution. It isn't necessarily surprising for me to say that humans are having an impact on animal evolution. That much is kind of to be expected, especially since we tend to treat the Earth like we're the only ones who live on it. But 2021 showed us some pretty clear examples of just how we are affecting this change. Studies have now shown a sharp rise in the populations of African elephants without tusks. Why? Well, because of poaching, of course. Poachers killed so many elephants with tusks, especially during the Mozambican Civil War from 1977 to 1992, which left the females without tusks more likely to pass on their genes. Another more indirect way that humans are impacting animal evolution is with the changes that we are experiencing in the climate. A study from Trends in Ecology and Evolution has shown that bats are growing to have bigger wings and rabbits are growing to have longer ears, and these are both likely to dissipate more heat into the surrounding area and cool them down. A study in Science Advances suggested that 77 species of birds found in a remote patch of the Amazon rainforest were found to weigh less and have longer wings, most likely as a result of rising temperatures as well as the changes in the rainfall pattern. In our number 6 spot today, we have the early humans. This scientific breakthrough involves one of the earliest human species, Neanderthals. Some very cool paleontologists from Madrid created a 3D model of the ear structure of Neanderthals. That alone is just an unbelievable sentence. Scientists in 2021 recreated the ear structures of an early human species that lived 130,000 to 40,000 years ago. And that's not even the wild, crazy discovery. I love science. So, they created these 3D models, and it made them then realize that Neanderthals may have had the ability to speak and hear just like Homo sapiens, which is of course the modern human species. Every year we uncover more and more data and material that challenges what we once thought we knew about the early humans. It is so fascinating and interesting to watch it all
all unfold. In our number 5 spot today, we have Early Humans Part 2. Remember when I just said 2 seconds ago that every year we learn more that changes what we once believed about the early humans and the history of humans? Well, here's another one. In September of 2021, a study dated footprints that were found in the White Sands National Park, and they were said to be from 21,000 to 23,000 years old. For those of you sitting there being like, well, how could they possibly know how old footprints are? These prints, referred to as the ghost prints, were dated by using radiocarbon dating of the dried ditch grass seeds that were found both above and below the footprints. The reason why this dating was important is because prior to this, many archaeologists placed the start of human life in the Americas at around 13,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age, and this was based on tools that were found in New Mexico. The paper that published this information, which, just for transparency, has been debated by some, suggests that humans actually lived on the continent during the ice age, which of course changes a lot. A month after this find, there was a study published in Nature that showed evidence of Vikings living in North America earlier than what was once thought. The researchers got to this conclusion by examining cut wood and finding samples of a cosmic ray event that happened in 993 CE. This is definitely a couple of discoveries that are still unfolding and being examined and looked into further, but it's all very interesting. In our number 4 spot today, we have quantum computing. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, this is a discovery that I know very little about, if I even know anything on the topic at all, so bear with me as I try to do my best to explain. To my understanding, quantum computers do in seconds what the best supercomputers would take days or weeks to complete and process. These quantum computers use the laws of quantum physics, which is the thing I know nothing about, to get these incredible processing capabilities, which completely changes the game for a multitude of things like meteorology, cybersecurity, national defense, the list just goes on. Okay, so how does this relate to a 2021 moment? Well, in November of last year, IBM launched the 127 Qubit Eagle, which is the most powerful quantum processor ever. Then a company called Quantinum launched a cloud-based cybersecurity platform called Quantum Origin. Meanwhile, I'm in 2022 still trying to figure out what the cloud is. This is said to set the stage for quantum computing to start rapidly evolving, so I guess I'm gonna need to catch up. In our number 3 spot today, we have Heart of Titanium. With the understanding that heart disease takes an estimated 17.9 million lives around the world every year, it makes a lot of sense that for over 50 years, doctors have been trying to find a way to build an artificial heart, and 2021 saw us getting the closest we've ever been. An Australian research team called Bivacor built a titanium heart that uses something called spinning disc technology. Basically, it of course doesn't operate like a normal human heart, but instead it tries to one-up and improve the regular old evolution perfected human heart and give it an even better way to pump blood around the body. It has a circular pump that is suspended between 2 magnets that lives inside of this titanium heart. Right now, there has yet to be a full human trial, which makes sense. These things take a lot of time, and it's certainly better not to rush them. The promising news, though, is that the artificial heart has been successful so far in both scenarios in animal trials, as well as when used temporarily on heart transplant patients. In our number 2 spot today, we have coral reefs. Whether you believe in climate change or not, we can all agree that in the last few decades or so, we've seen a lot of natural disasters. From forest fires to droughts and heat waves. Maybe this is a result of climate change, maybe this is just how things go. I'm not here to argue with you, I'm just here to tell you about how this uptick in natural disasters affects our planet. More specifically, our coral reefs. These kinds of disasters and just the general climate of the Earth has an impact on the temperature of the oceans. This change in temperature has caused the reefs, which we forget are living things, to cast out this kind of symbiotic algae that helps them survive, which is then causing the reefs to bleach and then die. In 2021, a huge report was published from the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network that showed that the oceans had lost about 14% of their reefs in the last decade. Then another study was later published that showed that there was less than 2% of the Great Barrier Reef that was able to escape bleaching since 1998. And this was all published just months after a different study that suggested that half of all coral reefs have been lost since the 1950s. Unfortunately, our coral reefs are in a lot of danger right now, and it affects more than just the ecology of the ocean. It will also impact us as humans. It impacts fisheries, tourism, coastal developments. I'm not saying that all of these are good reasons to care, but if they're the ones that get someone interested, then I guess it's something worth mentioning. In our number 1 spot today, we have the fireball. On February 28th, 2021, reports came pouring in from across the UK UK of an unusual streak of light that was seen in the sky. These reports were far behind the UK's Fireball Alliance though, as their cameras had already picked up the signal and they were already in the midst of estimating its landing site. That's right, this streak of light was a meteor. It's a remnant of our early solar system that has been flying through space at unbelievable speeds until it came down through our atmosphere and ended its long, awesome journey scattered in a bunch of pieces across rural Gloucestershire. Teams were sent out to be responsible for the recovery of the extraterrestrial material, which was found in a family's driveway as well as in a sheep's field nearby. This meteorite is a rare specimen known as primitive carbonaceous chondrite, which is said to contain materials that have been essentially unaltered since the formation of the solar system 4.5 billion years ago. The pieces of this meteorite can give us insights into the building blocks of the planets, and it can potentially give us clues as to how the Earth came to be this wonderful planet that possesses all of the resources necessary to sustain human life.
At number 10, we have an Octopus Nursery. 8-legged alien-looking things with suction cups all over their arms and beaks for mouths. Octopus are creepy-looking things, and to top it all off, they can camouflage like a Navy SEAL, and they are super smart. If these are the kind of things that make your skin crawl, then just running into one of these guys would probably freak you out. Well, on the underwater expedition at the Davidson Seamount, there was a rather shocking discovery. They had a remote probe that was on the ocean floor around 10,000 feet, and they came across which seemed to be an octopus that was next to not just one, not just two, but a group of 1,000 octopuses in a nursery. They were all there laying their eggs and using the heat from the volcanic vent to keep them warm. I would hate to be the guy who accidentally steps into that crack and then gets devoured by thousands of sticky arms. But if you're at 10,000 feet underwater, you probably are already screwed.
In our number 9 spot today, we have the Gangkar Puensum. This mountain is the largest mountain that has been unclimbed by humans and stands at a height of 7,570 meters or 24,836 feet. Studies and measurements of this mountain started 100 years ago in 1922, but it wasn't until much more recently that we began to acquire actually accurate details about it. The name of the mountain means White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers, which becomes an important part of why this mountain remains unclimbed. In 1983, the mountain became open for mountaineering, but between 1985 and 1986, there were 4 separate expeditions who tried to summit it and failed. Part of the reason why these expeditions failed were because there were disputes on the location and there was just inaccurate information, so the first group who tried to summit it couldn't even find the mountain at all. In 1994, the climbing of mountains in Bhutan higher than 6,000 meters became prohibited due to spiritual beliefs, and in 2003, mountaineering became prohibited entirely. This is why the mountain remains unsummited, and while I'm sure it would be an amazing expedition for climbers, who knows what is going on up there in terms of ecology due to it being left alone. In our number 8 spot today, we have the ancient seabed. A seabed that was once located at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean was found buried hundreds of miles beneath China. This slab of rock once found its home at the top of the lithosphere, which is the outermost layer of the Earth. How did it get hundreds of miles below China? Well, it got pushed down by a neighboring tectonic plate in what is called a subduction event. This discovery was so notable because scientists had never detected a subduction event so deep within the surface of the planet. When they found this rock slab, it was still continuing its descent towards the mantle of the Earth. I wonder if one day it will come back to the surface again. In our number 7 spot today, we have a gibbon skull. Gibbons are a type of ape that are often characterized by their swinging ability coupled with their loud, bright calls, and the 8th century Chinese poet Li Bai described their voices as they swung past the Yangtze River. But here's the thing. Today, there are no gibbons that live anywhere near the river. Also, the gibbons that exist now have different fur patterns from the ones that are often depicted in classical Chinese paintings. This has led experts to believe that there must have been another kind of gibbon that has now vanished, and physical evidence of this gibbon might have turned up in the most unexpected place: a tomb. This tomb, which was built for the grandmother of the first emperor of China nearly 2,300 years ago, contained a skull and a jawbone so distinct that scientists believed they must have belonged to a member of this now extinct gibbon genus. Many surviving gibbon species are now facing extinction, so it is likely that there were others in the past who unfortunately faced the same kind of fate. In our number 6 spot today, we have the green gel. This is a discovery that was made by the Yutu-2 rover, which is currently exploring our wonderful moon. On Lunar Day 8 last year, which began on July 25th, the rover was doing its thing, finding its way through an area that was filled with a bunch of small impact craters. On July 28th, as the team here on Earth was preparing to power down the rover for its little midday nap, which is meant to protect the machine from high temperatures and radiation from the sun, one member of the team was checking over some images that were taken by the rover's main camera, and they spotted a small crater that seemed like it contained some sort of material that had a color and a sort of luster that was significantly different from the lunar area surrounding it. The team then changed the plans they had for the rover and decided that instead of going west, which was next on the schedule, they would instead take a little detour to check out this mystery material. The rover carefully made its way over to the crater and examined it with both its visible and near-infrared spectrometer, which is a thing that detects lights that are scattered or reflected off of a material, which helps to reveal what they're made up of. For a while, no one knew exactly what the substance was, and it was only being described as being gel-like and being a weird color, but after almost a year of more research, it was finally identified. It's rock. More specifically, rock that was melted together, most likely in the heat of impact from a meteorite. It's insane that something like that created a dark green, glistening impact melt, but it's also very cool. I'm just glad that this is one mystery that we got to the bottom of. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Gobi Desert structure. This is one discovery that had conspiracy theorists' minds absolutely swirling. About a decade ago, someone was searching through some Google Maps images when they found a mysterious array of structures and patterns that appeared to be etched into the surface of the Gobi Desert, which is of course located in China. The structures are reminiscent of geoliths, but they're seemingly much more modern and newly created. The speculation of what this structure could be or why it was created went wild, with people saying that they were street maps of American cities or messages either to or from some sort of extraterrestrials. The list of bizarre theories just goes on. While this is still sort of conspiracy sounding, this is likely the most reasonable explanation for what these structures are, and that is that these structures are used to help calibrate China's spy and radar satellites. To be fair, this does make a lot of sense, and I don't have any other ideas on what it could be for, so. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Droughts. Ancient drawings and writings were found covering the walls of the Diyu Cave, which is located in central China, and a lot of them detail different droughts and such that were experienced during the time of their writing. According to these drawings, people would come to the cave for either water or to pray for rain in times of drought. The writings reveal some of the horrors that the people of the time experienced while going through these periods of drought, including severe starvation, social instability, and conflict between government and citizens. While these cave writings show us a difficult time in history, researchers say that the stalagmites that were also found in the cave might show a grim prediction for the future. Since these are formed by dripping water and they form sort of rings, like how trees do, and these rings can give us insights into different things. Based on the patterns of these rings, scientists were able to corroborate the things that the cave writings were saying, but they were also able to make a grim prediction for the future, which is that unfortunately the region may again see one of these catastrophic droughts, this time in the late 2030s. In our number 3 spot today, we have the ruins. Taking over our number 3 spot today, we have the most recent discovery on this list. While archaeologists were digging at one of the most important archaeological sites in China just earlier this year, they found a bronze altar as well as a dragon with a pig's nose, among many other things, in a couple of the sacrificial pits that are seen at this site. In fact, they said the findings were made in sacrificial pits 7 and 8, to which I have to ask, how many are there? Another highlight of the new finds was a bronze box with a tortoise-shaped lid. Inside, this box contained jade artifacts, and even traces of silk fabric were found around it. These finds are so astonishing because every little piece gives us so much insight into the buried secrets of the ancient Chinese civilization. In our number 2 spot today, we have an ancient mystery. While excavating a tomb in China, the team discovered the skeleton of a young man that was riddled with wounds, giving clues as to how he died. The man is estimated to have been about 25 years old at the time of his death, and it is thought that he was harmed and then thrown into the tomb raider's shaft while still alive, which is absolutely gruesome. It is believed that this crime took place between 640 and 680 AD. It appears as though he wasn't a thief because the shaft had begun to be refilled with soil by the time of his death, so we really aren't sure why this young man met this cruel fate. As a true crime enthusiast myself, this is absolutely fascinating, and I wish we could find some answers answers to bring this guy's story full circle, but sometimes these things are just destined to stay a secret. In our number 1 spot today we have the palace. Archaeologists and researchers were certainly baffled a few years ago when they were digging beneath the foundation of the Lifang Pagoda, which sits on Lifang Mountain. Well, digging isn't exactly the right word. To be honest, there was a huge stone or boulder that weighed over 1,500 pounds that was lifted away, which then revealed a stone tablet. Once this tablet was lifted, it revealed a huge underground palace. Inside this palace, researchers found many hidden treasures that included a Buddhist statue, bronze mirrors, coins, and there was also a rusty iron case that was found during the initial discovery, which researchers believe held many relics. The pagoda that sat on top of this hidden palace was first completed in 976 AD, so it is thought that this area remained untouched from at least then until its modern discovery.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the James Webb Telescope. Christmas definitely came on December 25th this year, especially for those of you out there who are space enthusiasts, and you know that's because the launch of the James Webb Telescope finally happened on Christmas Day itself. If you don't know, the James Webb Telescope is the largest and most powerful telescope ever developed, with its creation beginning back in 1996. The telescope was created with help from NASA, the Canadian Space Agency, and the European Space Agency, and it cost around $500 million to make. The launch of the telescope has been long awaited, as it was delayed more times than Cyberpunk. Other than the fact that we all had to wait with bated breath, the reason this launch is so exciting is because for the next several decades, this telescope will show us parts of the universe that were previously unseeable to us. We'll get a closer look at and a chance to explore other planets, we'll see the birth of stars, and it might even give us a peek into how the very first galaxies were formed. Basically, this thing might show us more about the universe than we've ever had access to before. It is truly magnificent. Right now, the telescope is passing through its most crucial phase, which is the unfurling of the sun protective shield, and if all goes well, which it seems to be thanks to the ground team working on it every step of the way, we are very close to seeing some of the most amazing space discoveries in human history.
At number 9 we have the Siberian lake monster. Of course, if we're doing a list of scary things that live underwater, we have to throw a giant mysterious sea monster on here. What separates the Siberian lake monster from other more popular guys that we have seen like Loch Ness and that kind of stuff is that underwater scans have actually picked this guy up. This thing is deep in Lake Labinkur, and some radar has shown that it looks like a 33-foot long creature is living there. Now this is probably just a skeleton, but if this thing is dead, it means that there was once a giant man-eating monster in this lake. I thought we were supposed to be safe in freshwater. They've nicknamed this thing the Devil, so you know he's a good time and loves company. So next time you go up to the cottage and you're swimming in the water and you feel safe, remember there might be a giant monster lurking underneath the water ready to turn you into a side dish. At number 8 we have the blue hole. Now there are several blue holes in the world. There's one in Belize, there's one in the Red Sea, there's a giant one in my heart that was left there from when Reboot ended on a cliffhanger. How are you going to end a show that so many people fell in love with on a cliffhanger? I will never trust again. Well, this one is between Cape Verde and the Caribbean islands. Scientists are really confused about this thing. It's a crack in the bottom of the ocean floor and is several thousand miles long. What's strange about this is there's no explanation of how this happened. It might have been tectonic plates moving around, but when this happened, the Earth will probably start to repair itself and there's been no sign of this. My theory is this is where Godzilla goes to sleep at night. I mean, it seems like the most logical answer. It's either that or the gateway to hell. Like, come on guys, I'm doing real science work here. At number 7 we have the Yonaguni Complex. This was discovered by scuba divers in the 1980s. I think that's the scariest part about this one. Could you imagine going scuba diving back in the 80s? The technology back then must have been a tube going up to some guy who would blast fresh air down to you using a bicycle pump. I don't even think they had decompression sickness figured out back then. The chances of you coming up the bends was probably super high. Well, if it wasn't for a few divers in Japan who were willing to sacrifice it all to look at some cool stuff, we wouldn't know anything about the Yonaguni Complex. It's still a mystery as to what this thing is. It looks like some temples that might have existed thousands of years ago, but when the ice age decided to melt, it would have covered this entire area. This could be why an entire civilization got plunged underwater. Or the temple could have been on a cliff, and then when a massive earthquake hit, it knocked the temple into the water. But like everything in life, there are some haters who say this whole thing is just a natural rock formation. Some people just want to ruin everything. At number 6 we have Anacorra Cista Twista. One of the reasons why the underwater world is such a mystery is because we find things like this in there. Sure, there are beautiful things down there like bright fish fish and chubby marine mammals, but there's also the unknown, unidentified organisms, like Anacorra cysta twista, which should be the name of an 80s hair metal band. But what is this thing? Well, it's a protist. And what is a protist, you may ask? Well, it's an organism that doesn't belong to any animal group, fungus, or plant group. What does that mean? I really have no idea, you guys. I think it means it could be an alien. Some alien came down to Earth for a swim and then scraped its knee on some coral, and now we have alien creatures running around the ocean, probably waiting for you to pee so it can swim up your pee hole and then work its way into your brain. It's really the only logical answer. At number 5, we have the Bimini Road. How were the pyramids made? Was it aliens coming down to share their technology and secrets with us, or was it just thousands upon thousands of slaves who sacrificed their lives and their spines to build them? Well, we don't know and we may never know, but the Bimini Road is another one of these mysteries. It's off the coast of the Bahamas, and it looks like it could have been a pathway that was placed perfectly with giant slabs of rock. Similar to the way the pyramids were made, it seems that these large slabs of rock were too large to be moved by man, and also like the pyramids, these giant slabs were also perfectly placed so well. So where does everyone's mind go when something like this happens? Well, magic or aliens. The logical answer is that this is a natural phenomenon of the water moving and hitting the rocks to make these formations, but people think that this was made using advanced technology from aliens and could have been the road to Atlantis. Honestly, I like the Atlantis theory much better. It's more fun. At number 4, we have colossal squid. Yeah, this thing is a big no thanks for me. So everyone always talks about how there might be sea monsters out there, but this thing actually exists. There's never been one caught alive, but several have washed onto shores dead, and they are massive. The largest one ever discovered was 45 feet long, and it was dead. So you know there was an even bigger one out there that killed this guy. They don't even have suckers on their tentacles, they have hooks. Let me say that again. This squid has 10 giant arms covered in hooks. This thing is straight out of a horror movie. Scientists aren't even sure what something this big eats. They think it probably feeds on whales or your deepest, darkest fears. I wouldn't be surprised if the colossal squid works part-time as a gatekeeper for hell. It makes me think that the old Greek stories about the Kraken might have been real. At number 3, we have underwater circles. Giant formations of circles that are formed underwater, and nobody knows how they got there. These mysteries were discovered off the coast of North Carolina, Florida, and Belize. Now, what are they? Like many things on this list, myself and the entire scientific community have no idea. But here are some theories. Maybe they were formed naturally by either two things, water currents or some sort of animal mating ritual. Another idea is that these things were made by ancient civilizations before the Ice Age. All these things would have been above ground and might have been art left over by some old-timey tribes. And the third theory is that they look kind of like a bullseye, so it might be some sort of nuclear missile target, and if you hit it hard enough, the explosion will cause some sort of major natural disaster like an earthquake or tsunami, or if we're lucky, both. At number 2, we have Megalodon. If you have a fear of sharks, you're gonna love this one. Megalodon was a prehistoric shark that was even bigger than the giant hooked tentacle beast that was earlier on this list. If you've already forgotten about the colossal squid, it clocked in at around 45 feet long, where Megalodon was closer to 60 feet long. It was a 60-foot shark that could probably rip a blue whale in half in one bite. Well, maybe not that, but it was still a gargantuan creature with teeth the size of Brock Lesnar's fists. This thing wouldn't even chew you, it would just swallow you whole and then fart your skeleton out into the dark, cold ocean. At number 1 on our list, we have Giant Eyeball. A mysterious giant eyeball washed onto the shore of a Florida beach back in October of 2012. I don't know any other kind of giant eyeball other than a mysterious one. There's no super common regular giant eyeball just lying around. But this is also Florida. This is the state where people smoke crack at weddings and kiss alligators on the lips, so maybe it's a little more common over there. Well, this giant eyeball was found by Gino Cavacci, and he didn't know what the hell to make of it, so he took it home and then stuck it in his freezer. Then he called the cops, and the cops came in and told him, "We don't do giant eyeballs on the beach. You have to call the wildlife people." And then he called the wildlife people, and they were like, "What the hell is that?" And he was like, "I don't know. I brought it to you guys to try and figure out what it is." And then some people were like, "Maybe it's a sea monster," and other people were like, "No, it's probably from a marlin." And I think in the end, no one really knew what the hell it was. But just so you know, there's giant eyeballs out there just laying around the beach sometime.